Our study was the impact of sensory modality on heart rate and its relationship to trait empathy. Empathizing with someone requires different cognitive processes such as emotional regulation. Empathy is developed during early childhood and is believed to be connected to an individual's biological makeup and care that's received. Empathetic individuals are more likely to engage in proactive behaviors. Studies have shown that there is an association between heart rate and the ability to empathize with others in social situations. The goal of our study was to investigate whether sensory modality affects empathetic behavior. In other words, when it comes to empathy, does it matter whether the stimulus is present visually or in audiovisual format? Is the effect associated with trait empathy? We had three hypotheses for this study. Heart rate will increase in both groups. Heart rate change will be significantly higher in the audiovisual group. The IRI scores will be positively correlated with the change in the heart rate in both groups. In our study, we had 12 participants, which were all UMass Dartmouth undergraduate students. They were between the ages of 18 and 24. They consisted of 6 females, 5 males, and 1 agender person. To conduct the study, we had the participants fill out a consent form and demographic questionnaires while wearing a Fitbit to monitor heart rate. They then filled out the interpersonal reactivity index, which measures 4 components of empathy: perspective taking, fantasy, empathetic concern, and personal distress. After filling out the forms, they were randomly assigned to either the audiovisual group or the reading group. It consisted of watching a movie clip from the messenger or reading a transcript of that same movie clip, which lasted for about 5 minutes. Then their post heart rate was recorded.
For this study, we ran an independent samples t-test. There was no significant difference between the groups, and we had a p-value of 0.223. Next we ran our correlations for the heart rate and the IRI. There was also no significant correlation between the 4 subscales. The 4 subscales are perspective taking, which measures the ability to understand others' perspectives; empathetic concern, which assesses the ability to experience feelings of sympathy and compassion; personal distress, the tendency to experience anxiety and discomfort in response to others' suffering; and finally, fantasy, which measures the tendency to imagine yourself in the feelings and actions of fictional characters. All of these 4 subskills had their own individual p-values. Perspective taking had a p-value of 0.216. Fantasy had a p-value of 0.569. Empathetic concern had a p-value of 0.555. And finally, personal distress had a p-value of 0.857.
From these results, we can conclude that statistically there is no clear association between the modality of empathetic exposure, i.e. audiovisual or reading, and change in heart rate or physiological response. Additionally, we also did not see any correlations between any of the interpersonal reactivity index subscores and heart rate, and we did not see a net increase in heart rate between before and after exposure. Though notably, there are some strong limitations to this study that warrant more analysis. For example, the sample size was very small. There were only 12 participants, and even for a binary study with only 2 results, typically 20 is the bare minimum, and this had a non-binary measurement. We can't really generalize the results from this study, as this is a very specific edge case. It's hard to imagine that what we measured and what we administered is something that forms a pattern, but rather might be part of a pattern. And the testing session was no more than 15 to 20 minutes tops and was oftentimes much shorter. So as a result, it's difficult to place much weight on these results. But we can tell from the results visually and from the outliers that it's possible with a larger sample size, a relationship may arise from an unexpected source. We expected that there would be a relationship between audio-visual exposure and greater increase in heart rate, but the 2 outliers where participants had a much higher heart rate were in the reading group, which could have an interesting interaction with the concept of rumination, which was not entirely expected. There was also the possibility that we could introduce different stimuli for inducing empathy to invoke a different response or type of response, as it's entirely possible that exposure to this particular stimulus was not stimulating enough. We also need to, if another study were run in this capacity, investigate the differences in trait empathy among age groups, gender groups, and even other sorts of demographics as well. Overall, there's a lot that could be understood from this study to perform future studies, even though it does not produce results of its own. And of course, this entire project was made possible by Dr. Heliosa Alves and Grace Fenner. Without them, this project would not have gotten off the ground.